Welcome back to the Horror Academic. And speaking of being an academic, yes, I'm doing more research. And for my representation of African American women in horror and science fiction, so I started a two-parter. So you'll probably see the other half of this review later. Blackula. Oh, there you go. Yeah, Blackula. So I watched the first one. So this is just like one of those films that's been like you always hear about, and I think part of my issue was that it was kind of like a joke, right? Like Blackula, oh, that's got to be cheeseball, right? Like how good could something named Blackula be? That sounds ridiculous. But actually, it wasn't bad. I mean, I shouldn't be that shocked, right? It's 1972. It's like essentially brought to you by the same people that made the Sugar Hill, which I really loved, right? Like that was a great one. This is okay. I'm just checking my notes here. So Sugar Hill was Ganja and Hess is 73. Sugar Hill 74. Okay, so Blackula is before that. So this is 72. So perhaps this is like the first foray into blaxploitation horror. And maybe that's why it's kind of like synonymous or even infamous in many ways. But I mean, it was a pretty straightforward movie with a majority black cast, right? And that's really the only difference is it is a fairly traditional telling of maybe not Dracula, but of the kind of Hollywood version of Dracula. But it has this little preamble that sets it up, and you have the Count. Count Dracula is a person in this film, and you have an African prince with his wife who come to visit Dracula, and he's going to negotiate with them. And basically the only terms that the prince seems to start with is abolish slavery. And Dracula pretty much laughs at him, and he's just like, why would I do that? And he just becomes more and more kind of this smarminess comes out, and Dracula is like it just kind of becomes more and more offensive to his guests, and that leads to a struggle because basically the prince is like, well, then this meeting's done and I'm gonna get out of here. And Dracula calls in his guys, his goons, and it ends up them duking it out, and Dracula banishes them to a coffin, and I'm going to make you Blackula. And it's like, so he's, his sire is Dracula. But so, that was a really kind of cool way, I think, to introduce it, because I didn't expect that, first off, for it to have an actual link to the Dracula tale. But it was really setting up Dracula as the White Devil, and it's a very good metaphor in this case. And because he has that kind of European aristocracy, or even to what I would more equate with slavery, is that kind of Southern gentleman charm. And it comes out, and I think that was a really effective way to start it off. So that was, I thought that was a cool way to get going. And then when it comes to present day, and in present day, and this also was another thing that kind of shocked me, was it starts off with a couple buying the abandoned Dracula castle, and that couple is a mixed race gay, male couple. So this same-sex couple is buying a home. This is 1972, and they're mixed race. And I was like, that had to be so out there for the time, right? Like, I just can't think of a lot of other movies in 1972 that were touching on these topics, right? And, it's obviously, they're in Dracula's castle, so it ain't gonna last too long for them because Blackula's still there. Apparently Dracula left, but Blackula's still around. So that was shocking. I was like, whoa, we're hitting all kinds of buttons I didn't expect, like this is really touching on some topics. And I guess maybe that's because exploitation films, but even so more like B movies in general and in genre, can kind of like throw topics in there, and people are going to just kind of blow it off like, oh, well, that was just a horror movie. What do they know, right? So it's really cool to see how they were subtly trying to attempt to talk things out. And it was, there's, I found that the film was not racist in ways that I could identify, at least, but it was homophobic. And it's even to the point where, obviously those two men are attacked by Blackula and turned, and later in the story, they in trying to get to Blackula, they track one of the gay guys in the downtown district picking up a guy, and the chatter between the two cops is like, I think that's the guy we're looking for, or the fairy, or whatever term they throw out there, and then it becomes, well, they all look the same, right? And it's like, huh, and these are white cops. So yeah, I mean, it hits on some stuff, and I thought that was kind of cool, kind of brave. In general, okay, I really dug. I had like a pluses and minuses list that I made on this film after I watched it, because I was a little conflicted, because I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. I mean, I liked it, but it didn't grab me. Like Sugar Hill grabbed me, and I was like, whoa, this is a cool movie, And this was just kind of like, this is a better movie than I expected, because it takes itself seriously as much as you can, really, in a vampire film. And it doesn't really, like, it's not over the top. It's not, I think we're early enough in blaxploitation. This is what I come out of this. I don't tend to like jump on board with a lot of blaxploitation, because there's so many tropes thrown in there that this is not over the top yet. I think when you hit some of the later films that I've seen, in ways that I've looked at them in kind of like a female lens, yeah, it's hard to deal with some of the kind of over the top ridiculousness that I see, especially because it's like hyper masculinity. But I didn't really see that here. Aside from Blackula, instantly being able to take over a woman that he equates, because she looks like his dead wife from the first scene. It's really not as sexualized as you would imagine some vampire films could be, especially after watching Ganja and Hess, which was just, very hypersexual. So so here's my pluses and minuses, right? So plus, vampires turn instantly. Like, you aren't even done biting them, and they're already like wide-eyed vamps, right? So that was cool. We're in this 70s pre-Dawn, well, no, Dawn of the Dead also very much has this problem, where undead, especially if they're African American, are blue. Why are we blue? I mean, I guess it's that whole oxygen, they're thinking about all that, how blood and oxygen, kind of that whole thing. Doesn't work. Blue vampires aren't scary. Plus, they move really fast and have vicious attacks. Like, there's a swarm of them. Like, they kind of take out their hideout, right? So at the end of the movie, and there's just a bunch of them by then, and just it's like they're jumping on people, they're attacking, their like teeth blare, like they're pretty vicious. So that's a plus, totally. Like I said, homophobic attitudes, that's a negative. There's too much music. I like musicals. This is not a musical. Stop trying to make whoever those artists who are playing in the club a thing, because they're not, and those music scenes were way too long. I get you're trying to make it feel like a club atmosphere, but I don't need 3 full songs by these guys, by the end of the movie. So that was too much for me. Decent effects. They had like that blood from the eyes, like the teeth were like full of blood. It was good, visceral. There are a couple of these moments where you have these slow-mo attacks. Very cool, very artsy. I like that. In the scene where they're in like the vampire lair at the end, there just happens to be in this warehouse, chemical plant warehouse, like a case of conveniently kerosene lamps that become Molotov cocktails as soon as you throw them without any flame involved. So that was a little like, I don't know about that, guys. All right, so that's a minus. How about nobody notices is anything? There's like one dude who keeps saying at the club, man, that's a strange guy. But everybody else is kind of cool with oh yeah, there's this guy who only comes out at night and wears a cape. Don't get that, especially with the sideburns. Come on, it's a tell. Anyway, blood equals red paint. That's up there with the blue for undead. These are 70s special effects, and they have not quite gotten to these like Dick Smith level of skill that you'll see by the time we hit Day of the Dead for undead stuff. And I've had this talk before. I thought this was kind of like a little weak at the end of the movie, and I'm like trying to sum it up in my head. I'm like, oh right, the girl that is his long lost love come back reincarnate is named Tina instead of Mina. That was kind of cheeseball. Anyway, right, other things I wanted to say. Yes, Dracula's the White Devil. not just a gay couple, but an interracial gay couple. Really crazy for 72, I thought. Blaxploitation, but not over top. We talked about that. Majority black cast, but most of the cops are white. What does that say about the city that they filmed in? Probably quite true, right? Um, a scientist. So there's this forensic officer who's the one who does all the investigating and figures it out. And he uses science, right? Like he looks, there's a blood loss on the bodies. You touch the veins, they stay, kind of deflated. He notices the puncture marks. So it's this scientific approach. And then he starts to slowly test out, like, wait, if this really is vampires, so will a stake work? Will a cross work? He's kind of like working it on his head, and I thought that was really well done. A lot more time than I think many vampire films now take to be like, would we really buy this, right? And so I thought that was a really well done thing. Like I said, I thought it would be super cheesy, but it wasn't. There's a great sequence in one of the bar scenes and by this time the forensic guy is totally onto him, and he, in a conversation with Blackula, he's like, well, I was thinking about the occult. What do you think about the occult? And they start talking. He's like, oh, it's interesting, and blah, blah, blah. He's like, well, what about vampires? What do you think about vampires? And Black is like, well, they are the most fascinating of all. So it's like this really cool to and fro, like back and forth, that you would have seen maybe with a Van Helsing character. So I thought that was neat. Which ends in the thing where he's like, well, the people are thinking that these people who are missing might be victims of vampires, but not all the cops believe it. And Blackula's like, well, I would think that's the best defense a vampire has, because you wouldn't believe in us, or believe in them. So I just thought that was a nice little tit for tat. William Marshall plays Blackula. The forensic officer who is the lead of the film, that is, I can't read my handwriting, but the actor who played him, sorry about that, the actor who played him, and I'm going along, is one of the admirals, I believe, in Star Trek Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. Thought that was super cool. Like I said, it's a Sam Arkoff, so this is the same people who bring you a lot of things, American International. And I just think this might have been the thing that got them all rolling. Like I said, I'm not an expert on blaxploitation, and I found this to be pretty good. Like, it didn't draw me in as much as Sugar Hill. Actually, I had to do it in 2 parts. I watched half the movie last night, half this morning. And, but overall, I just thought it was a fairly well-made B movie. And, the only thing is, can't really use it for my positive reinforcement of black female characters project, but the sequel, I know I can, because I've seen clips of it before, and that stars Pam Grier. So next episode will definitely be Scream, Blackula Scream. I'll see you later, guys. Bye.